What up, fam? Thank you so much for all the feedback last week. Let's talk about week 2 of the college football season. What a week it was, and as I'm recording this, there are still some games going on. I'm still adjusting to this whole central time zone thing where it's 11 o'clock and the Pac-12 still in the second quarter. So if Eastern ends up coming back and beating Fresno State or something like that, and I don't talk about it, that's why. Guys got to go to bed at some point. But let's talk about some of the big stuff that happened. And the biggest thing is Alabama losing. Some might look at it as Texas winning. For me, the big story is Alabama losing at home in a non-conference game. Texas gave them all they could handle last year. This year they come through, and every time that Alabama seemed like they had delivered the punch, like they were ready to pull away with this thing, like they finally broken through, Texas fought right back. Quinn Ewers threw for over 300 yards, and every time they needed a big play, he was able to have time in the pocket and make the big throw. He looked poised, his footwork was good, and they were able to make the big plays, particularly in the fourth quarter when this thing kind of blew open. They were able to make the plays when they needed to. Alabama, I was surprised because we were told all training camp how were having basically a three-man quarterback battle, and Jaden Milroe won that battle. He did not look nearly on the level of the quarterbacking that Alabama has had for the last 6 or 7 years. When you go from Hurts to Tua to Mac Jones to Bryce Young, he, in the pocket several times, tried to take off when the pocket was clean. When it hadn't collapsed yet, ended up running right into defenders. The footwork was not there at times. The throwing on the run was not there. Those are all things that you expect. We're talking about Alabama. They can get nearly any quarterback that they want. And I was particularly surprised that Saban never looked towards the other quarterbacks that supposedly were in a battle with Milroe all camp, to the extent that he didn't name a starter until right before week 1. So I thought that was interesting because Milroe really struggled to throw the football at times in this game. So what does this mean for the future? This isn't just a blip for Alabama. This is very, very concerning. Now, I know better than to doubt the top people in their sport. It's like every time people were like, oh, Belichick's cooked, Brady's cooked. You got to be smarter than that. Nick Saban is going to be absolutely upset and probably not sleep for a week, and they're going to come out and absolutely pummel whoever it is that they play next week. But this is concerning for their playoff chances for this season because they're going to need to be able to throw the ball at the level that they have over the last couple of seasons, over the last 5 or 6 seasons. And Jaden Milroe is not that guy. They're going to need somebody else who can throw it at that level because it's not going to be him. And I think that was made pretty clear tonight for Texas. We're familiar with the memes, with the Texas is back, all of that. I do think that they have to be the favorites in the Big 12 right now if they weren't ball ready. TCU is not last year's TCU, and last year's TCU was barely last year's TCU. They got very lucky several times during that season. Kansas State, not quite on that level. Oklahoma hasn't played the caliber of opposition that Texas has. So those moving pieces, I think, and Baylor losing. Now they've lost to Texas State and they lost to Utah today. More on that later. So I think that it has to be Texas who's the favorite in the Big 12 and therefore a favorite in the playoff. I hate preseason rankings. I think that Texas should be number 1 after a win like this. No one goes into Alabama and wins. They're not going to be. They're going to probably get into the top 5. But huge win for them and a huge win for their program. I hope that Sark celebrates responsibly tonight after the win. But this is big for them. No doubt about it. They haven't had a win this big maybe since 2006. Maybe since Young scampered right into the end zone. This might be their biggest win since then. I'm probably exaggerating. Colt McCoy's probably had bigger wins. But this is right up there. That moves to our second point. Huge weekend for the Pac-12. All right. This is in the swan song year of the Pac-12. It's probably the strongest it's been in over a decade. You've got great quarterbacks all over the place, from Bo Nix at Oregon leading them down the field for the game-winning field goal to beat Texas Tech, who's now lost to Wyoming and Oregon in its first 2 weeks of the season, so they're done playing Western teams. From that to Cam Ward over at Washington State beating Wisconsin, to Penix at UW by Michael Penix. He has looked fantastic. He's thrown for nearly 900 yards in 2 games. To USC, where I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, where Caleb is killing it right now. Caleb Williams, I'm sorry. And USC has absolutely pulverized their competition. They're still playing Stanford right now. But I told you it's late at night. But the string of quarterbacks, not to mention DJ at Oregon State, right? Cam Rising at Utah. And to talk about the Utah game, coming back against Baylor like they did, they had absolutely no offense for 3 quarters because Cam Rising, their quarterback, their leader, tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl last year, has missed the first 2 weeks of this season. They had enough offense to get by Florida. They did not have enough offense to get by Baylor. A Baylor team that was playing very upset after losing to Texas State last week. So what do? They switch quarterbacks in the 4th quarter. They get the boost that they need. The guy that they brought in played fantastic. I really like this guy, and I think he's a high candidate to transfer if he decides that he doesn't want to stick around for next season. This is going to be Rising's last year, so I think that he just jumps into that role next season. The guy can play, and he led them down the field, led them down, ran in for the touchdown to tie the game. Then they got the ball back, and then they won the game at the end when Baylor was trying to let them score and get the ball back off a bad Baylor interception. Big time comeback from Utah because it means that all the main contenders that the Pac-12 has for playoff spots, which the biggest ones are probably USC, Washington, Oregon, and Utah, are all 2-0. They're all 2-0, and they've all got nice non-conference wins. Utah's got 2 excellent non-conference wins in Florida and Baylor. Washington's beaten Boise State. USC will get chances later. They'll get to play Notre Dame at some point. And Oregon gets the win over Texas Tech this week. So big non-conference wins for all of them, and it sets up what's going to be a really fun Pac-12 schedule. And one of the reasons this is going to be just that much fun is because Colorado's also involved, and that's our other big thing to talk about. Once again, Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes, they win again this week. They take care of a bad Nebraska team. I don't think people realize just how bad this team is. They get the job done. Obviously, there's going to be a letdown from week 1. My opinion on this Colorado team has not changed. I think they're a 7 to 8 win team that is very good, but that is starting to get a little too much buzz because of who they are, because of who Deion Sanders is. But they are a very good football team. It's going to be really fascinating to watch. They're going to play Colorado State next week at home. Then they go to Oregon, and they're home against USC. The Oregon and USC games are going to tell us just what kind of Colorado team we have and just what the pecking order is in the Pac-12 for this season. So that's going to be really fun to watch. Anyways, appreciate y'all, everyone that commented and liked on the previous video. This was week 2 in the college football season. Much love to everybody. I'll be back with the NFL tomorrow night.